A billionaire wandered the streets on a cold December night, his mother's funeral notice crumpled beside him. Suddenly, at a stoplight, he froze. Just steps away on the snowy sidewalk, a thin blind boy stood barefoot on cardboard, singing the hymn Michael's mother used to hum, his trembling hands gripping a soaked sign, "Help my mother." The billionaire stepped out, cold slashing across his face, and dropped money into a dented can, never knowing that what happened next would change both of their lives forever. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe and hype, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The cemetery gates closed behind Michael Preston with a hollow clang that echoed through the December air. Snow drifted in slow spirals, catching on the shoulders of his charcoal overcoat, melting against the lingering warmth from the funeral. He stood there a long moment, breath clouding the cold, staring at the fresh mound of earth crowned with white chrysanthemums, his mother's grave. 3 days old, the parking lot stretched empty before him, asphalt slick with thawing snow. His Mercedes sat alone under a street lamp, black paint gleaming wet. Still he didn't move toward it. His feet felt anchored by something heavier than grief, regret that had hardened in his chest over the past 72 hours. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check. More condolences, more polished sympathy from men in expensive suits who'd come to the funeral, not for his mother, but for him, for access, for favor. She would have hated it. She'd wanted something small, the hospice nurses who held her hand, the neighbor who brought soup. Instead, he'd planned it the way he planned everything. Efficient, immaculate, curated. Finally he walked to the car. His leather shoes crunched through the thin crust of snow, the sound too loud in the stillness. Everything felt too loud now, the absence of her voice, the silence waiting at home, the empty chair she used to fill before the cancer returned, before he got too busy to visit. 12 years of remission, that's what the doctors had said then, hope wrapped in cautious optimism. But the cancer had returned, relentless, stage 4. He'd been in Tokyo when she called. He'd told her he'd fly back that weekend. The weekend became next week, and then came the hospice nurse's call. "If you want to say goodbye, come now." He'd made it, barely. She drifted in and out, machines breathing around her. In a brief lucid moment, she'd gripped his hand and whispered, "Promise me you'll find something worth living for, not just working for." Living for, he'd promised. And now, standing in the cemetery parking lot, he had no idea what that meant. He drove home through streets blurred by falling snow. The penthouse wasn't home, just square footage filled with furniture chosen by designers and silence left behind by his ex-wife. "You're never present," she'd said. She'd been right. Manhattan shifted around him, Midtown's towers giving way to older brick buildings, cars that had seen better decades. He wasn't watching the road, just moving, trying to outrun the scent of chrysanthemums clinging to his coat, the image of the casket lowering into frozen ground. A red light stopped him at an intersection he didn't recognize. Steam rose from a subway grate, a bodega's neon sign flickered. Pedestrians hurried past, breath trailing like ghosts, and then he heard it. A voice, singing. It cut through the closed windows of his car, through the hum of the heater, through the white noise of city traffic. The voice was young, untrained, but pure in a way that made his hands tighten on the steering wheel. It was singing an old hymn, something his mother used to hum while cooking dinner, something he'd forgotten existed until this exact moment. Michael's chest constricted. The voice sounded so much like her, not in tone but in feeling, in the way it carried a kind of weary hope that came from singing when you had nothing left but song. He turned his head slowly, searching for the source. On the sidewalk, barely visible through the falling snow, stood a boy, thin, maybe 11 or 12 years old, wearing a jacket too light for the weather. His eyes were closed, not in performance, but in concentration. In his hands, he held a cardboard sign, the words barely legible through the moisture seeping into the cardboard. "Help my mother." Michael's breath caught, the boy's hands trembled, whether from cold or fear or exhaustion, he couldn't tell. But the singing didn't waver. The child's voice rose and fell with a practiced resilience that spoke of too many nights spent on corners like this one, too many hours standing in the cold while the world rushed past. The light turned green. Behind him, a horn honked impatiently. Michael didn't move. He stared at the boy, at the way snow gathered on his dark hair, at the way his fingers gripped that sign like it was the only thing tethering him to hope. The horn honked again, longer this time, angrier. Michael barely heard it. All he could hear was that voice, singing a song his mother had loved, sung by a child who looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on shoulders too narrow to bear it. Another car swerved around him, the driver shouting something obscene through the window. Michael still didn't move. He sat there, engine running, snow accumulating on his windshield, and felt something crack open inside his chest, something that had been sealed tight since the day he'd decided ambition mattered more than presence, since the day he'd chosen quarterly earnings over Sunday dinners. The boy finished the verse and opened his eyes, not eyes exactly, Michael realized with a sharp intake of breath. The boy was blind, his gaze was unfocused, aimed at nothing and everything, seeing the world in ways Michael had forgotten existed. Before he fully understood what he was doing, Michael pulled the car to the curb, tires crunching against the snow-packed gutter. He cut the engine. The silence that followed felt immense, broken only by the muffled sounds of the city and the boy's voice starting another verse. Michael stepped out into the cold. Snowflakes struck his face, melting instantly against his skin. He stood there for a moment, expensive shoes soaking through on the wet sidewalk, and watched the boy sing. Up close he could see more, the threadbare cuffs of the jacket, the worn sneakers held together with duct tape, the way the boy's breath came quick and shallow, like he was fighting to stay upright. The singing stopped abruptly. The boy's head tilted slightly, sensing presence. "Sir?" His voice was hesitant, cautious. Michael swallowed hard. His throat felt tight, words tangled somewhere between his heart and his mouth. "I heard you singing," he finally managed. The words sounded inadequate even as he spoke them. The boy's face shifted, a flicker of something, hope maybe, or wariness. "My mom taught me that song. She's sick, real sick, I'm just trying to help her get better." The simplicity of it gutted him. No elaborate story, no manipulative plea, just truth delivered in a child's voice. Michael felt his mother's presence then, stronger than he had since she died, as if she were standing beside him in the snow, watching to see what he would do. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his wallet. His hands, usually so steady in boardrooms and negotiations, trembled slightly as he opened it. He didn't count the bills, he just took them, all of them, and placed them in the boy's collection can. The sound of paper meeting metal felt both insignificant and monumental. The boy's expression didn't change much. He nodded once, a gesture too mature for his age. "Thank you, sir, God bless you." Michael turned to walk away. He made it 3 steps before his feet stopped moving. The snow fell harder now, the street lights casting orange halos through the white curtain. Behind him, the boy had started singing again, that same hymn, that same desperate hope woven through every note. He walked away before the boy could argue, before he could see Michael's hands shaking, before the tightness in his chest turned into something messier. His footsteps echoed off wet pavement. Behind him, the boy Liam, he'd learn later, called out something. Thanks maybe, or questions. But Michael kept walking. He made it to his car before his hands started trembling too hard to grip the keys. He sat in the driver's seat, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, breathing through his mouth to keep his composure. That boy's voice, that desperate, determined love for a dying mother, it was too familiar, too fresh, too much like the last 4 months of watching his own mother fade while he threw money at problems that money couldn't fix. Michael's phone buzzed again. His lawyer, the divorce settlement. He silenced it without looking. Tomorrow he'd have to go back to his office, sign papers, attend meetings. Tomorrow he'd have to be the version of himself who had everything under control, who made $1-million decisions without flinching, who just buried his mother with the same composure he used to close business deals. But tonight, in this car that smelled like melting snow and chrysanthemums, Michael let himself sit with the truth he'd been avoiding. He'd failed to save his mother despite every resource at his disposal, failed to save his marriage despite 12 years of trying, failed to feel anything but this hollow ache that lived where his chest used to be. That boy on the corner, Liam, he didn't have resources, didn't have money or connections, or any of the things Michael had accumulated like armor. All he had was his voice, and his determination, and a dying mother he refused to give up on. Michael's fingers finally steadied enough to start the engine, As he pulled away from the curb, he checked the rearview mirror. Liam was still there, still clutching that collection can, his face tilted toward the sound of traffic like he was listening for something. Snow was starting to fall harder, coating the midtown streets in white. Michael drove home. The penthouse was dark, silent, exactly as he'd left it. His footsteps echoed through empty rooms. In the kitchen, a casserole dish from a neighbor sat on the counter, along with a card he hadn't opened. The living room still held the faint scent of his mother's perfume. She'd visited 2 weeks before she died, insisting she felt fine even as she needed to rest every few minutes. He poured scotch he didn't taste and stood at the window overlooking the city. The lights of Manhattan glittered through falling snow, beautiful and indifferent. His mother's last words cycled through his mind on repeat. "Promise me you'll find something worth living for." He'd nodded, agreed, held her hand until it went slack in his. And he still didn't understand what she'd meant. Michael's reflection in the window showed a man in an expensive suit with hollow eyes. Successful by every metric that mattered to the world he inhabited. Empty in ways the world never measured. Sleep didn't come that night. He lay in his too large bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing Liam's voice cutting through traffic noise, hearing his mother's labored breathing in that hospital room, hearing the silence that had filled his house since his ex-wife Karen left, taking with her any pretense that their marriage had been real. At 3 in the morning, Michael gave up. He went to his study, turned on his laptop, and started researching. Pneumonia treatment costs, homeless services in New York, survival rates for untreated respiratory infections in children. The statistics were grim, the resources were inadequate. The system was broken in ways that made his hands clench into fists. By dawn, he'd made a decision he couldn't quite articulate even to himself. It wasn't logical, it wouldn't bring his mother back or save his marriage or fill the void in his chest. But it was something. And something was better than the nothing he'd been living with. Michael's car was already moving before he'd consciously chosen the destination. His hands knew the route, back to that corner where Liam sang. Morning traffic was heavier now in Midtown, commuters fighting through slush-covered streets. Fresh snow from overnight had painted the city white, but exhaust and footsteps were already turning it gray. The thermometer on his dashboard read 19 degrees. He'd tried to sleep, given up around 4 in the morning after lying awake replaying that voice, those 3 words on the cardboard sign, the way Liam's shoulders had tensed when Michael approached. His bedroom had felt suffocating, his penthouse too full of absence, Karen's empty closet, his mother's voice that would never echo down the hallway again. The grief counselor his lawyer had recommended would probably say this was avoidance, running toward someone else's crisis to escape his own. Maybe she'd be right. Michael's fingers tightened on the steering wheel as he turned onto Broadway, but it didn't feel like running. It felt like the first deliberate step he'd taken since watching his mother's casket lower into frozen ground. The corner was empty when he arrived. Michael parked across the street, killed the engine, and waited. The dashboard clock read 5:43 in the morning. Too early. The kid probably slept somewhere nearby, would return when foot traffic picked up. Michael should leave, come back later, not sit here like some. Movement in the alley beside the building caught his eye. Liam emerged from the shadows. His gait was steady despite his blindness, each step measured and practiced. He wore the same layers as yesterday, plus a knit cap pulled low over his ears that already had snow collecting on it. His breath fogged thick in the bitter air. Michael watched as the boy positioned himself against the building wall, exactly where he'd been the day before. Same spot, probably memorized every crack in the sidewalk, every sound that indicated foot traffic. Liam set down a battered backpack, pulled out the cardboard sign, propped it carefully against the wall. Snow immediately started accumulating on its surface. Then he just stood there for a moment, head tilted back, face raised toward a sky he couldn't see. His shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. Steeling himself maybe, or praying, or just preparing to survive another day in December cold that could kill. Michael's hand moved to the door handle. Stopped. What was he doing here? What could he possibly offer this kid beyond money already given? His mother was dead, his marriage was over. He was a 47-year-old man who'd spent 2 decades building a life that meant nothing, helping no one, connected to nothing real. Liam started singing. The decision made itself. Michael crossed the street, his shoes crunching through fresh snow in a rhythm Liam's head immediately tracked. The boy's voice didn't stop, but his posture shifted, wary, calculating threats. "It's Michael," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. His breath clouded between them. "From yesterday." The singing cut off mid-phrase, Liam's head angled toward his voice, suspicious. "You came back." "Yeah." Michael's hands found his pockets, seeking warmth. "I came back." "Why?" The question was blunt, edged with the kind of distrust that came from broken promises. Michael understood it. He'd stopped trusting people years ago, somewhere between his father's affair that destroyed his parents' marriage and Karen's careful distance that had killed his own. "I don't know," Michael said honestly. It was the truest thing he'd said in months. Liam's jaw worked, processing. Snow collected on his shoulders, in the folds of his thin jacket. He had to be freezing. "The money you gave, it's enough for a week of medicine, maybe 2 if we're careful." His fingers found the cardboard sign, gripping its edge. Snowflakes melted against his skin. "But that's not why you're here." "Smart kid." Michael's throat felt thick. "No." "So what do you want?" What did he want? Michael stared at this boy who'd somehow articulated the question that had been haunting him since his mother's death. What did he want? Not money. He had more than he could spend. Not success. His company was thriving, even as he'd checked out emotionally. Not his marriage back, that had been dead long before Karen's lawyer made it official. "I want to meet your mother," Michael heard himself say. Liam's expression shuddered immediately. "Why?" "Because." Michael's lungs felt too small, his breath fogged thicker in the cold. "Because my mother just died. And I couldn't save her, and maybe," his voice cracked. He swallowed hard, forced it steady. "Maybe I can help save yours." The words hung between them, raw and unpolished. Liam's hands clenched at his sides. For a long moment, neither spoke. Traffic sounds filled the space, distant sirens, a bus hissing through slush 3 blocks over, the endless white noise of Midtown waking up. "People don't help," Liam said finally. His voice was flat, matter of fact. "They promise things, they feel good about themselves for 5 minutes. Then they disappear." "I'm not disappearing. You don't know that." Liam's chin lifted, defiant despite his vulnerability. Snow caught in his eyelashes, melted against his too pale cheeks. "You don't know what you'll do tomorrow, or next week, or when helping stops feeling good and starts feeling like work." Michael absorbed the hit. The kid was right, he had no idea what he was promising, what he was even doing here. Yesterday he'd given money on impulse. Today he'd returned on instinct. Neither were plans, neither were commitments, but they were something, and something was more than the nothing he'd been living with. "You're right," Michael said. "I don't know what I'll do tomorrow. But I know what I'm doing right now." He took a step closer, watching Liam track the movement through sound. "Right now, I'm asking to meet your mother. To see if there's a way I can help. And if you say no, I'll leave and never bother you again." Liam's jaw clenched. His fingers found his white cane, gripping it tight enough that his knuckles showed white even in the dim morning light. The internal war played across his face, trust versus self-preservation, hope versus hard-earned caution. "She's not strong," Liam said quietly. "You have to be careful with her." Relief flooded Michael's chest, unexpected in its intensity. "I will be, and if you're lying, if this is some kind of sick curiosity thing, I'll." Liam's voice broke, he stopped, collected himself. "Just don't lie. Please." "I won't lie," Michael said. It felt like a vow, like the first true thing he'd said since standing at his mother's graveside, promising to honor her memory. Liam nodded once, sharp. "Okay." He bent to collect his backpack, movements practiced and efficient. Snow cascaded off the cardboard sign as he moved it. "She's close, 3 blocks. But he turned his clouded eyes in Michael's general direction. "Don't tell her about the money you gave, she'll feel guilty. She's already guilty enough." Michael understood that guilt, had felt it radiating off his mother in those final weeks, as if her dying was somehow an inconvenience she'd inflicted on him. As if love could ever be a burden, rather than the only thing that made any of this bearable. "I won't tell her," he promised. The alley behind Angelo's Italian kitchen smelled of rotting vegetables and stale grease. Dumpsters lined one wall, overflowing with trash bags that had split open in the cold, their contents spilling across the cracked asphalt. A broken heating vent rattled against the brick wall, producing more noise than warmth. Michael followed Liam through the narrow space, watching the boy navigate with practiced precision, his feet finding the path by memory and sound. They passed a loading dock, some discarded crates, a stack of flattened cardboard boxes that rustled in the wind. "Here," Liam said quietly, stopping near the base of a fire escape. "Mom, it's me. I brought someone to help." At first Michael saw nothing but shadows and debris. Then the pile of blankets against the wall moved, and he realized he was looking at a person. A woman, wrapped in layers of clothing that had seen better years, her body curled against the cold. Even from several feet away, he could hear the labored sound of her breathing, each inhale a rattling struggle. "Liam." The voice was weak, thread-thin. "Baby, who's with you?" "His name is Michael, Mom. He wants to help. He seems different." The woman tried to sit up, couldn't manage it, settled for turning her head. Her face emerged from the shadows, gaunt, hollow-cheeked, skin gray with illness and cold. But her eyes were alert, intelligent, filled with a mother's protective fear. "Who are you?" "Not hostile, just wary." "Careful." Michael moved closer slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. "My name is Michael Preston. Your son was singing yesterday, and I stopped to listen. He told me you're sick. I'd like to help, if you'll let me." "We don't need charity." The words came out stronger than her physical state suggested, pride giving her voice power her body lacked. "It's not charity," Michael said quietly. He paused, searching for the right words. "My mother died 3 days ago, and I wasn't there for her when it mattered. Maybe I can't fix that, but maybe I can be here for you." The woman studied him, her gaze sharp despite her obvious pain. "Why would you help strangers?" "Because I can, and because someone should have already." He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. "What's your name?" "Evelyn." "Evelyn Carter." "Evelyn, when did you last see a doctor?" She laughed, a bitter sound that turned into a cough. The cough went on for nearly a minute, her whole body shaking with the force of it. When it finally stopped, there was blood on her lips. She wiped it away with a corner of her blanket, the gesture so practiced it broke Michael's heart. "Doctors cost money," she said when she could speak again. "Money we don't have. That's not your concern anymore. I have money, more than I know what to do with. Let me use it for something that matters." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling an ambulance. They'll take you to Lenox Hill Hospital. I'll go with you. I'll make sure you get whatever treatment you need." "No." The word came out sharp, panicked. "No hospitals. They'll ask questions. They'll take Liam. I've heard the stories. Sick mother, blind child. They'll say I'm unfit. They'll put him in foster care." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Michael said firmly. "But Evelyn, you're coughing blood. You need medical attention now, or you're not going to survive much longer. And then what happens to Liam?" The logic hit home. He could see it in her face, the calculation, the terrible weighing of risks. Die here, and leave her son alone, or risk the hospital, and possibly lose him to the system. "I'll protect him," Michael said. "I promise you, I won't let anyone take him away from you. But you need to let me help you first." Liam knelt beside his mother, taking her hand. "Mom, please, I'm scared. You're getting worse. This morning you couldn't even stand up." Something inside Evelyn cracked. Pride and fear softened under the weight of a child's voice. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Michael dialed 911, giving the address with unshakable calm. While they waited, he draped his coat over her shoulders and sat on the frozen ground beside them. He'd mentioned his mother without meaning to. "My mother died 3 days ago, and now that confession lingered in the air." "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn murmured. "Of course." "You said your mother. What did she die from?" "Cancer. Lung cancer. She beat it once, 12 years ago. Experimental treatment, clinical trial. We thought she was cured, but it came back 6 months ago. Stage 4. There was nothing they could do the second time." Evelyn was quiet for a moment,
Then what was her name? Catherine. Catherine Preston. Even in the dim light of the alley, Michael saw the shock register on Evelyn's face. Her hand flew to her mouth, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Catherine Preston. Presbyterian Hospital, 12 years ago. She was in the clinical trial for that new immunotherapy drug. Michael's blood ran cold. How do you know that? Because I was her nurse's aide. I was assigned to the oncology floor. I took care of her during her treatments. Evelyn's voice shook. She was so kind, always asking about my life, about my pregnancy. When I told her I was having a baby, she was the first person to really celebrate with me. She told me about you, showed me pictures, said she was so proud of you, even though she wished you'd slow down. The world tilted. Michael felt like the ground had opened beneath him, revealing connections he never could have imagined. You knew my mother. I took care of her for 8 months, every treatment session, every checkup. We became friends, real friends. Evelyn coughed again, grimacing with pain. When I was 7 months pregnant, they fired me. Budget cuts, they said, but really it was because I needed more bathroom breaks, more time off for doctor appointments. Your mother was so angry. She tried to fight it, even wrote letters to the hospital administration. It didn't change anything, but she tried. Michael's vision blurred with tears. She never told me, never mentioned you. Because that's who she was. She helped people quietly. Didn't need recognition. Evelyn reached out with her free hand, touched Michael's arm. She talked about you constantly. How brilliant you were, how successful. But also how worried she was that you were missing life while chasing success. She said she prayed you'd find something that mattered more than money. The ambulance sirens cut through the morning air, growing louder. Red lights strobed against the brick walls, turning the alley into something surreal and urgent. 2 paramedics jumped out, their faces shifting from professional assessment to poorly concealed shock when they saw Evelyn's condition. How long has she been like this? The older paramedic asked, already moving, checking vitals, preparing oxygen. Too long, Michael said quietly. They worked quickly, efficiently, but Michael could see the concern in their eyes. The way they exchanged glances when Evelyn's blood pressure reading came back, the tight set of their jaws when they listened to her lungs. She was in bad shape, possibly critical. We need to move now, the younger paramedic said, and they lifted her onto the stretcher with practiced gentleness. Evelyn's hand reached out, searching, and Liam was there instantly, gripping it. I'm coming with you, Mom. I'm right here, sir. The older paramedic turned to Michael. Family only in the ambulance. Are you? I'm taking responsibility for them. Michael said, the words coming out with more certainty than he felt. Both of them. I'll follow in my car, and meet you there. But as they started to load Evelyn into the back of the ambulance, she suddenly gripped the edge of the stretcher, her eyes finding Michael's. Wait, please, I need to tell you something. The paramedics paused. Michael moved closer. Your mother, Evelyn whispered, her voice urgent despite her weakness. The last time I saw her, right before they fired me, she made me promise something. She said, Evelyn, no matter what happens, promise me you'll never give up on that baby. Every child deserves someone fighting for them. I kept that promise, even when we lost everything, even when I got sick, I kept fighting because she made me promise. Michael's throat closed, he couldn't speak, could only nod. And now you found us, Evelyn continued, tears streaming down her face. 12 years later, her son found us when we had nothing left. That's not coincidence. That's her. That's Catherine making sure I didn't break my promise alone. The ambulance doors closed, and suddenly Michael was standing in the alley, with Liam, the red lights fading as the vehicle pulled away, siren wailing into the snowy morning. The boy stood very still, his hand still outstretched in the direction his mother had disappeared. Mr. Preston, Liam's voice was small, uncertain. Is she going to die? Michael looked down at this child, who'd already learned to navigate a world that had shown him nothing but hardship, who'd learned to sing for coins, while his mother slowly succumbed to illness, who'd learned to ask the questions most adults couldn't bear to voice. He could have lied, could have offered empty reassurance, But something about Liam's unseeing eyes demanded honesty, even when honesty was brutal. "I don't know," Michael said quietly, "but we're going to fight for her, both of us, together. That's what my mother would want, that's what she'd expect from me." Liam nodded slowly, then reached out his hand. Michael took it, feeling the cold, small fingers grip his own. They walked back to where his Mercedes was still parked on the street, its engine long since cooled.
As Michael helped Liam into the passenger seat and buckled him in, he caught his own reflection in the car window. He looked the same expensive coat, same tired eyes, same face he'd seen in the mirror yesterday morning. But something fundamental had shifted. He'd left his mother's grave feeling empty, hollowed out by grief and regret. Now driving through the snowy streets toward the hospital with a blind boy in his passenger seat, a boy whose mother, his own mother, had cared for 12 years ago, he felt something else entirely. Purpose. Terrifying, inconvenient, and absolutely undeniable. His mother had asked him to find something worth living for. Maybe, impossibly, he'd just found it. Lenox Hill Hospital at night was a cathedral of fluorescent light and antiseptic efficiency. Michael had been here before for charity galas in the atrium, for board meetings about capital campaigns and new wings bearing donors' names. But he'd never been here like this, disheveled and urgent, snow melting off his coat, holding the hand of a frightened child as they pushed through the emergency entrance. The waiting room assaulted them with sensory overload, bright lights, crying babies, the metallic taste of adrenaline and fear that seemed to permeate the very air. Michael approached the admissions desk, where a tired-looking woman with reading glasses perched on her nose looked up from her computer screen. "I called ahead," Michael said. "Evelyn Carter, the ambulance just brought her in. Critical respiratory distress." The woman typed something, squinted at the screen. "Are you immediate family?" Michael's jaw tightened. "I'm taking financial responsibility for her care. Whatever she needs, whatever it costs. Now where is she?" Something in his tone, or perhaps in the cut of his suit, made the woman's demeanor shift. "They've taken her straight to emergency assessment. Dr. Morrison is on call tonight. If you'll just have a seat, I need to speak with Dr. Morrison." "Now, sir, she's with a patient, then find me someone who can tell me what's happening." Michael's voice carried across the waiting room, not loud but commanding. He rarely used this voice anymore, the one that had built empires and closed billion-dollar deals. It felt both foreign and familiar on his tongue. A door opened and a woman in scrubs emerged, late 40s, auburn hair pulled back, lines of exhaustion etched around her eyes. "I'm Dr. Morrison. You're the one who came in with Evelyn Carter." "Yes, how is she?" The doctor gestured toward a quieter corner of the waiting room, away from prying ears. Michael guided Liam along, feeling the boy's grip tighten on his hand. "Mr. Preston. Michael Preston. This is her son Liam. Doctor." Morrison's expression softened when she looked at Liam, something gentle touching her tired features. Then she turned back to Michael. "I need to be direct. She's in severe respiratory failure. Advanced pneumonia, bilateral. Her oxygen saturation is critically low and there's significant fluid buildup in her lungs. We've intubated her and started aggressive IV antibiotics and diuretics, but her system is severely compromised." "What's the prognosis?" Dr. Morrison hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "She's very sick, Mr. Preston. Even with aggressive treatment, the next 48 hours will be critical. We're doing everything we can, but I need you to understand, there's a real possibility she may not survive this." Michael felt Liam's hand begin to shake in his. The boy's face had gone pale, his jaw clenched with the effort of processing what he'd just heard. "What does she need?" Michael asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "What would give her the best chance?" Dr. Morrison studied him for a long moment. "The standard treatment protocol is what we've started: antibiotics, oxygen support, diuretics to clear the lungs. But there's an experimental approach that's shown promise in cases like hers. It's a combination therapy with a new anti-inflammatory agent that helps reduce lung tissue damage. The early trials have been encouraging. But," Michael could hear the unspoken caveat, "but it's expensive. Very expensive. We're talking about $70,000 to $90,000 just for the initial course. Most insurance won't cover experimental treatments, and even then there are no guarantees. She's very weak. Her body may not be able to handle the aggressive protocol." Cost isn't a concern, Michael said immediately. If it gives her a better chance, do it. Whatever she needs. The doctor's eyebrows rose slightly. You understand that even with the experimental treatment her survival isn't guaranteed. That we're talking about a marginal improvement in odds. I understand that without it, those odds get worse, so do it. I'll sign whatever you need. Doctor. Morrison nodded slowly. I'll have the paperwork drawn up. Since she's unconscious and you're assuming financial responsibility, we'll need your consent to proceed. She paused, her expression softening again. For what it's worth, Mr. Preston, she's lucky you were there. Another few hours in that alley and we wouldn't be having this conversation. After the doctor left, Michael guided Liam to a row of plastic chairs. The boy sat down mechanically, his face blank with shock. She's going to die, isn't she? Liam's voice was hollow, stripped of emotion. That's what the doctor was really saying. Michael sat beside him, choosing his words carefully. The doctor said the next 2 days are critical. That means they don't know yet. Your mother is fighting, Liam, and we're going to fight with her. But I won't lie to you, she's very sick. It's my fault. The words came out choked. I should have made her go to the hospital sooner. I should have gotten more money singing. I should have. Stop. Michael turned to face him fully. This is not your fault. You're 12 years old. You should be worried about homework and friends, not keeping your mother alive. The fact that you've done as much as you have, that you've kept going, kept singing, kept hoping, that takes more courage than most adults have. But what if she dies? What happens to me? It was the question Michael had been dreading, the one with no good answer. Let's focus on helping her survive first, then we'll figure out the rest. They sat in silence for a long while, surrounded by the ambient noise of the ER. Eventually a nurse brought Liam a sandwich and juice box. The boy ate mechanically, not tasting anything, just consuming fuel. Michael watched him and felt something shift in his chest, a sense of responsibility that went beyond the immediate crisis. This child had no one. If Evelyn died, Liam would enter the foster care system, would be shuttled between homes, would likely be separated from everything familiar. The thought made Michael's stomach turn. Around midnight, Dr. Morrison returned. Her face was drawn but not defeated. She's stable. Barely but stable. We've started the experimental protocol. Her vitals are holding steady, which is better than I expected. It's still too early to call it progress, but it's not worse. Can we see her? Michael asked. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. Briefly, she's sedated, unconscious. But sometimes having familiar voices nearby helps. She led them through a maze of corridors, through security doors that required badge access, into the hushed, machinery-filled world of the ICU. The lighting was dimmer here, the air somehow thicker. Monitors beeped in careful rhythm, marking the boundaries between life and death with electronic precision. Evelyn lay in a bed surrounded by equipment, tubes running from her arms, a ventilator breathing for her with mechanical regularity. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by illness and the clinical environment. Her skin was gray, her hair matted, but her chest rose and fell steadily, pushed by the machine. Liam approached the bed with Michael's guidance, his hands reaching out until they found the bed rail. He gripped it tightly, knuckles white. "Mom?" His voice cracked. "It's me, it's Liam. You're going to be okay now. We found help. Real help. Michael's here, the man you took care of, his mother, remember? Catherine Preston, he found us. He's helping us. So you just rest, okay? You rest and get better, and I'll be right here waiting." Michael watched the boy speak to his unconscious mother, watched the tears stream down his face, watched him maintain his composure despite being more terrified than any child should ever have to be. And he made a silent promise, not to Liam, not to Evelyn, but to his mother's memory. He wouldn't walk away from this. Whatever happened, however this unfolded, he was committed now, completely, irrevocably, because 12 years ago his mother had cared for this woman, had made her promise to never give up on her child, and now, through some impossible twist of fate, he had the chance to help her keep that promise. It felt like his mother was still teaching him lessons from beyond the grave. Michael didn't go home that night, or the next. Lenox Hill became his entire world, white walls, soft beeping monitors, stale coffee cooling in paper cups.
The administration, recognizing both his name and his refusal to leave, quietly offered him a private consultation room. Clothes arrived from his penthouse. Meals materialized without him asking. He slept in fractured stretches on a leather couch, 2 hours at a time. Liam stayed with him. There was nowhere else for the boy to go, and Michael would never have let him leave regardless. An odd rhythm formed between them. This blind child and this hollowed-out billionaire, bound together by circumstance and a woman fighting for her life down the hall. The first 48 hours were brutal. Evelyn's vitals swung violently, stabilizing 1 hour, crashing the next. Dr. Morrison warned them twice to prepare for the worst. But Evelyn held on. She fought with a stubborn, surprising strength. On the third day she finally stabilized. Not a brief plateau, but real improvement. Oxygen levels rising, fluid clearing, the experimental drug working. Michael sat in the consultation room staring at the update, feeling something he barely recognized, hope braided tightly with fear. A knock sounded. Mr. Preston. A woman in a navy blazer stepped in, tablet in hand. I'm Sarah Chen, Hospital Social Services. We need to talk about Liam. The conversation he'd been dreading. Come in, he said. She sat composed, sympathetic. What you've done for this family is extraordinary. Truly, but we must address Liam's welfare. Evelyn will need months of recovery. She won't be able to work. They have no housing. Liam hasn't been enrolled in school, hasn't had consistent medical care, and has been homeless for at least 6 months. By law, I must report this to Child Protective Services. Michael felt cold spread through him. And that leads to what? CPS will investigate. Given Evelyn's health and their circumstances, there's a strong possibility they'll recommend temporary foster care. No, Michael's voice was sharper than intended. That's not happening. Mr. Preston, I know you care. The system has failed him already. He kept himself and his mother alive, and now that someone's helping them, the solution is to separate them. It's about safety, she said gently. He's safest with his mother, and with me supporting them. Michael leaned forward. I can provide everything they need: housing, medical care, education, stability. Sarah hesitated, then asked, are you proposing to become Liam's legal guardian? Michael hadn't consciously formed the thought, but hearing it out loud made everything click into place. If that's what keeps him out of foster care, yes. Guardianship is a serious commitment, she warned. You're responsible for his education, his medical care, his daily needs. And if something happens to Evelyn, then I continue caring for him. I know what I'm committing to. She made notes on her tablet. The process requires interviews, background checks, home inspections. It usually takes months. But CPS will make an initial determination within 72 hours. Michael stood, pacing. Then we have 72 hours to build a case showing he belongs with his mother. I want the best family law attorney. I want full documentation prepared, proof of stable housing, financial backing, educational support. Separation would harm him more than help. Mr. Preston, no, he said, turning back. File what you must, but when CPS reviews this case, they're going to see a child with a mother who loves him, resources lined up, and someone fighting for him. Not a case file in need of rescue. Sarah studied him. You've known them for 3 days. I've known them long enough to know they deserve more than the system has given them. Help me navigate it, or stay out of the way. For the first time she smiled faintly. I'll do what I can, but CPS will question your motives, your stability, your long-term commitment. They can question whatever they want. I have answers. After she left, Michael made call after call. His divorce attorney Patricia, a family law specialist, a private investigator to expedite clearance. He set legal machinery in motion with the same focus he'd once reserved for major acquisitions. But beneath the planning, a quiet voice whispered, you don't know these people. You failed at marriage. You weren't there for your mother. How can you raise a blind child? Yet every time doubt surfaced, he heard his mother's whisper, find something worth living for. This felt like the answer. That evening, he sat beside Liam in the ICU waiting area. The boy had barely spoken all day. Emotion shuddered behind silence. Liam, Michael said gently, the hospital must report your situation to CPS. They're going to ask questions. The blood drained from Liam's face. "They're going to take me. I won't let that happen. I'm working to become your legal guardian. That means I can make decisions for you, protect you." "Why?" Liam's voice cracked. "You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you love your mother. I know you're brave and smart, and I know my mother would want me to do this." He paused. "This wouldn't be temporary. If I make this commitment, it's real. For as long as you need me." Liam swallowed hard. What if my mom doesn't make it?" Michael crouched down. "Then you still have me. You're not going to face anything alone. I promise." Tears escaped down Liam's cheeks. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." 2 days later, Evelyn woke up. Michael was there when it happened, sitting beside her bed during one of the brief visiting windows. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then slowly sharpening. "Liam," she croaked, the word barely audible past the oxygen mask. "He's here, he's safe, let me get him." Michael squeezed her hand gently, then went to find Liam in the waiting area. When the boy entered the room and heard his mother's voice, he broke down completely, rushing to her side and gripping her hand like he'd never let go. Mom, you're awake, you're okay." "My baby," Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here, I'm still here." Michael stood back, giving them space, but Evelyn's eyes found him over Liam's shoulder. She mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." He nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. Later, after Liam had finally been convinced to get some sleep in the consultation room, Evelyn gestured for Michael to come closer. "I need to know," she said, her voice still weak but determined. "Why are you really doing this? Sarah from social services told me about the guardianship papers, about everything you're doing. Why?" Michael sat down, considered how to answer. "Do you remember my mother, Catherine?" "Of course. I loved her. She bought 12 extra years because of the treatment you helped manage." His voice faltered. "But she spent those years watching me miss everything that mattered. I buried myself in work. I wasn't present. I missed birthdays, holidays. I lost my marriage. And when the cancer returned 6 months ago, I was in Tokyo. She had to leave me a voicemail to tell me she was dying." Evelyn's eyes softened with recognition. "Before she died, she made me promise to find something worth living for. Not working for, living for." He exhaled. 3 days after her funeral, I heard Liam singing the hymn she used to hum. "And then I found out you were the nurse who cared for her when I couldn't bother to show up." His voice went quiet. "It felt like she was showing me exactly what she meant." Evelyn's tears fell faster now. "She would be proud of you." "I hope so, because I'm going to fight for you and Liam. Whatever it takes. CPS, lawyers, the whole system. I'm not backing down. You're not losing your son, and he's not losing you, not if I have anything to say about it." "Michael," she said quietly, "if something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to recover. But if it does," she insisted, "promise me you'll take care of him. Really take care of him, not just financially, but be there, be present, be what he needs." "I promise," Michael said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. He had no idea, in that moment, that he'd be called on to keep that promise sooner than anyone expected. The next 3 weeks unfolded in a blur of legal meetings, medical consultations, and tense standoffs with Child Protective Services. True to her word, Sarah had filed her report, and 2 days later, a CPS caseworker named Daniel Reeves showed up at the hospital with questions and forms, and the kind of bureaucratic skepticism that made Michael's blood pressure spike. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Reeves said, sitting across from Michael in the consultation room. "You met this family less than a week ago, and now you want to become the legal guardian of a special needs child, whose mother you barely know. That's an oversimplification. But yes, and you expect me to believe this is about altruism, not some." He consulted his notes. "Midlife crisis response to your mother's death." Michael's jaw tightened. "My motivations are irrelevant. What matters is that I can provide stable housing, excellent medical care, educational opportunities, and most importantly, keep Liam with his mother. Can the foster system guarantee any of that?" The foster system has trained professionals who specialize in caring for children with special needs. The foster system, Michael shot back, has a 70% failure rate for keeping siblings together, a 35% rate of placement instability, and documented cases of abuse that would make your hair curl. Don't lecture me about what's best for Liam when we both know foster care is a last resort, not a solution. Reeves's expression hardened. Mr. Preston, I understand you're wealthy and accustomed to getting your way, but this isn't a business deal. This is a child's life. And I have serious concerns about your ability to provide appropriate care given that you've never been a parent, you work 80-hour weeks according to your own employees, and you have no experience with blind children. Had no experience, Michael corrected. Past tense, I've spent every waking hour with Liam for the past week. I've learned more about his needs in 7 days than I learned about anything in the last year of my life. And as for working 80-hour weeks, that changes now. My priorities have changed. People say that a lot in the heat of the moment. Then reality sets in, and the novelty wears off, and suddenly the commitment doesn't seem so appealing anymore. Michael leaned forward, his voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. I don't do novelty, Mr. Reeves. I don't make commitments I can't keep. When I decide something matters, I don't change my mind, because it gets inconvenient. So either work with me to make this transition as smooth as possible for Liam, or I'll bring so much legal firepower to bear on your department, that you'll spend the next 5 years in depositions. Your choice. The threat hung in the air between them. Finally, Reeves sighed. I'll need to conduct a home inspection, interview you extensively, run comprehensive background checks, and even then, guardianship isn't guaranteed. The judge will make the final determination. Fine, name the time and place. I'll be there. Over the next 2 weeks, Michael's life transformed in ways he never could have anticipated. His penthouse underwent a rapid renovation, one bedroom converted to accommodate Liam's needs, with tactile markers on all the doorways, talking clocks, a computer with screen reading software. He hired consultants who specialized in accessibility, made sure every potential hazard was addressed. He met with educators from the School for the Blind, toured facilities, asked endless questions about curriculum and support services. He read books about parenting blind children, watched videos, joined online support groups. He attacked the challenge the way he'd once attacked business problems, with complete focus and absolute determination. But there were moments when doubt crept in. Late at night, sitting alone in his study, while Liam slept in the hospital consultation room, Michael would wonder if he was insane. What did he know about raising a child? About being responsible for another human being's entire future? He'd failed at marriage, failed at being a present son. What made him think he could succeed at this? The answer always came back to the same place, his mother's voice, asking him to find something worth living for. And Liam's trust, so fragile and precious, placed in him when the boy had every reason to believe adults would fail him again. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued to improve. Slowly, painfully, but measurably. The experimental treatment had worked. Her lungs were healing, her strength returning. Dr. Morrison called it remarkable, even miraculous. But she was cautious about the prognosis. The pneumonia is resolving, she explained during one of their updates. But Evelyn's overall health has been compromised by years of inadequate nutrition, stress, and living in harsh conditions. Full recovery will take months, possibly longer. She'll need ongoing care, regular checkups, and absolutely no stress. She'll have all of that, Michael assured her. Whatever she needs. 3 weeks after Evelyn had woken up, Michael received the call he'd been waiting for. His lawyer, Patricia, sounded cautiously optimistic. The judge has agreed to an expedited hearing for temporary guardianship. That's Tuesday, 10 a.m. If it goes well, you'll have legal authority to make decisions for Liam while we work on making the arrangement permanent. Tuesday arrived cold and gray, the kind of February morning that made people question why they lived in New York. Michael wore his best suit, not to impress, but because armor helped. He met Patricia at the courthouse steps, along with Evelyn, who'd insisted on attending despite her weakness. She leaned heavily on a walker, but her eyes were fierce with determination. You didn't have to come, Michael told her. You should be resting. They're not deciding my son's future without me, she said firmly. The courtroom was smaller than Michael expected, less dramatic. Judge Rebecca Martinez presided, 50s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she'd heard every story and believed none of them until proven otherwise. Daniel Reeves presented his report, outlining the situation with clinical precision. Michael listened to his own life, reduced to bullet points and risk assessments, heard himself described as financially stable but emotionally unproven, and well-intentioned but inexperienced. Then it was Patricia's turn. She presented documentation of Michael's background checks, spotless. His financial statements, more than adequate. Letters of recommendation from business associates, from Dr. Morrison, even from Sarah Chen, who'd apparently been impressed by his commitment despite her initial skepticism. Finally, Judge Martinez looked directly at Michael. "Mr. Preston, why should I grant you guardianship of a child you've known for less than a month?" Michael stood, feeling the weight of the question. This was the moment everything hinged on, not his money, not his lawyers, but his own words, his own truth. "Your Honor, I can't claim to have all the answers. I've never been a parent. I don't know everything about raising a blind child. I'm going to make mistakes." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I know what it means to lose someone because you weren't present. I know what it feels like to realize too late that you missed what mattered. My mother died 4 weeks ago, and her last words to me were to find something worth living for." He glanced at Evelyn, then continued. 12 years ago, my mother was dying of cancer. Evelyn Carter was her nurse's aide. She cared for my mother during her treatment, became her friend, and my mother tried to help her when she was fired for being pregnant. They made each other promises. My mother made Evelyn promise never to give up on her child, and Evelyn kept that promise even when it meant living on the streets, even when it meant her own health failed. Michael's voice strengthened. 4 weeks ago, I heard Liam singing a hymn my mother loved. That's what led me to find them, to discover this connection I never knew existed. I don't believe in fate, Your Honor, but I believe in responsibility. I believe that when you're given the resources and opportunity to help someone, you have an obligation to do it. Not halfway, not temporarily, but completely. Judge Martinez listened without expression. "And if Miss Carter's health deteriorates again, if she's unable to care for Liam long term, then I'll continue to care for him, for as long as he needs me. That's not conditional. It's not dependent on his mother's health or my convenience. I'm committed to this family now, fully and permanently. You understand that Liam has special needs that require specific expertise. I've been learning. I have resources, access to the best educators and specialists, but more than that, I'm willing to be present, to be there every day, not outsourcing his care, but actually participating in it. I'm restructuring my entire life around this commitment." The judge made some notes, then turned to Evelyn. "Miss Carter, you've been quiet. What's your position on this arrangement?" Evelyn stood slowly, leaning on her walker. "Your Honor, I've spent the last 12 years fighting to keep my son safe, fed and loved under impossible circumstances. I've failed him in a lot of ways. We've been homeless. I couldn't afford medicine. I couldn't give him the education he deserves. But I never stopped fighting." Her voice grew stronger. "Michael Preston came into our lives like an answer to a prayer I stopped believing would be answered. He's not trying to replace me or take Liam away. He's trying to help me keep the promise I made to his mother all those years ago. And if something happens to me, if my health fails again, I need to know Liam won't end up alone in the system. I need to know he'll have someone who sees him as a person, not a case file. Michael has proven he's that person." Judge Martinez reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally she looked up. "I'm granting temporary guardianship to Michael Preston for a period of 6 months, with the following conditions: regular check-ins with Child Protective Services, enrollment of Liam in an appropriate educational program, continued medical care for both Liam and Carter, and mandatory parenting classes for Mr. Preston focusing on special needs children." She fixed Michael with a stern look. "This is a trial period, Mr. Preston. I'm trusting you to follow through on these commitments. If at any point I believe this arrangement is not in Liam's best interest, I will revoke this order without hesitation. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Thank you. Don't thank me.
Thank me by proving you meant what you said." Walking out of the courthouse, Michael felt like he could finally breathe. Evelyn gripped his arm, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for trusting me with it," Michael replied. They went directly from the courthouse to the hospital, where Liam was waiting with a volunteer. When Michael told him about the guardianship, the boy's face lit up in a way that made everything, the stress, the legal battles, the life upheaval, completely worth it. "Does this mean I don't have to leave, Mom?" Liam asked. "This means we're family now," Michael said. "All three of us, and family stays together." Evelyn was discharged from the hospital 3 weeks later, weak but stable. The pneumonia had cleared, her lungs were healing, but she still needed rest and careful monitoring. Michael had prepared everything, meticulously. He sent a car to pick them up. Nothing ostentatious, just comfortable and warm. He met them at the building entrance himself, watching as Evelyn slowly exited the vehicle, leaning on a walker. She looked better than she had in the alley. Color in her cheeks, strength in her movements, but still fragile, still recovering. Liam bounded out behind her, all nervous energy and barely contained excitement. "Are we really going to live here, in your home?" "Our home," Michael corrected gently. "This is your home now." The elevator ride was quiet. Michael watched Evelyn's reflection in the mirrored walls, saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the walker. She was terrified, he realized, not of him exactly, but of this moment, of stepping into a world so far removed from the one she'd been surviving in. When the elevator opened directly into the penthouse, Evelyn gasped softly. Michael tried to see the space through her eyes, the gleaming hardwood floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, the modern furniture and art. It was beautiful, he supposed, but it had never felt like home, until now. "Liam's room is this way," Michael said, guiding them down the hallway. "I had some modifications made, but we can change anything you want." He opened the door to what had been a guest room. In the past 3 weeks it had been transformed. The bed was positioned where morning sun would warm it. Tactile markers lined the doorways and furniture. A desk held a computer with screen-reading software and a Braille display. Bookshelves were filled with audiobooks and Braille volumes. A tactile globe sat in one corner, its raised surfaces marking continents and oceans. Liam moved into the room slowly, his hands reaching out to touch everything, mapping the space. When his fingers found the globe, he stopped, tracing the raised lines with an expression of wonder. "This is all for me, all yours," Michael confirmed. And here he guided Liam's hand to a small device on the nightstand. "This is a Victor reader. It can play audiobooks, music, podcasts, whatever you want, voice activated." "I've never had my own room before," Liam said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Never had my own bed even." "Well, now you do, and it's yours for as long as you want it." Liam's composure cracked. Tears spilled down his cheeks, and suddenly he was moving toward Michael, wrapping his arms around him in a fierce hug. Michael froze for just a second. He wasn't used to physical affection, hadn't been hugged in longer than he cared to admit. But then his arms came up to hold the boy, and something in his chest loosened. "Thank you," Liam whispered against his shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Behind them, Evelyn leaned on her walker, tears streaming down her own face. Michael met her gaze over Liam's head and saw gratitude there, but also fear and uncertainty, and the weight of accepting help when you'd spent years learning not to trust it. The first few days were an adjustment. Evelyn was proud and independent, struggling with the reality of accepting charity. She insisted on trying to cook breakfast, even though standing for more than a few minutes exhausted her. She refused to use the master bedroom Michael offered, choosing instead a smaller guest room because it felt less imposing. She apologized constantly, for existing, for taking up space, for needing anything. Michael found himself learning patience in ways he never had before. In business, problems were solved swiftly, decisions made efficiently, but this was different. This required gentleness, respect for boundaries, understanding that healing wasn't just physical. Liam, by contrast, adapted with the resilience of youth. He explored every inch of the apartment with his hands, memorizing the layout, claiming spaces as his own. He discovered the piano in the living room, a baby grand that Michael's ex-wife had insisted they needed, but that no one had ever played. Liam's fingers found the keys and began picking out melodies, teaching himself through trial and error, and an apparently natural musical talent. Michael would stop whatever he was doing to listen, amazed at how quickly the boy learned, how the notes filled the apartment with something it had always lacked: life. One evening about a week after they'd moved in, Michael was working in his study when Evelyn knocked softly on the doorframe. She'd graduated from the walker to a cane and moved with increasing confidence. "Can we talk?" she asked. Of course. Michael gestured to a chair. She sat down slowly and for a moment just looked at him, assessing, measuring, trying to understand who this man really was beneath the wealth and the rescue. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. "About your mother, about what she meant to me back then." Michael set aside his laptop, giving her his full attention. "When I was working at Presbyterian, I was barely keeping my head above water. 26 years old, single, pregnant, terrified. The father had left the moment he found out about the baby's eyes, about the blindness. Said he couldn't handle a defective kid." The bitterness in her voice was old but still sharp. Michael winced at the word defective. "I was crying in the break room one day, trying to figure out how I was going to afford prenatal care and rent and everything else. Your mother came in. She didn't know me well, I was just one of the aides on her floor, but she sat down and asked what was wrong." Evelyn's voice softened with memory. "I told her everything. About the pregnancy, about the father leaving, about how terrified I was of having a blind baby and not knowing how to care for him." She paused, wiping tears from her cheeks. "Your mother held my hand and told me I was stronger than I knew. She said motherhood would be the hardest thing I'd ever do, but also the most important. She told me stories about raising you, about the sleepless nights and the worry and the joy. She made it seem possible. When the hospital fired me at 7 months pregnant, supposedly for budget cuts but really because I needed accommodations, your mother was furious. She called the HR department, wrote letters to the administration, even threatened to pull her participation from the clinical trial if they didn't reconsider." Evelyn smiled through her tears. "It didn't work. They still fired me. But she tried. She cared enough to fight for me when no one else did. The last time I saw her," Evelyn continued, her voice breaking right before I left the hospital, "she made me promise something. She said, 'Evelyn, no matter what happens, promise me you'll never give up on that baby. Every child deserves someone fighting for them. Promise me you'll fight.' And I did. I promised her." Michael felt his own eyes burning. "She never told me about you. Never mentioned helping anyone at the hospital, because that's who she was. She helped people quietly, without needing credit or recognition. She just did it because it was right." Evelyn leaned forward slightly, "And now 12 years later, her son finds us at our lowest point, and saves us exactly the way she tried to save me back then. You don't think that's her? You don't think Catherine arranged this somehow?" "I don't know what I believe about the afterlife," Michael admitted, "but I know that hearing about this, about how she tried to help you, how she cared, it makes me feel like maybe I'm finally becoming the person she always hoped I'd be." "You are," Evelyn said with certainty. "You're exactly the person she hoped you'd become. And she'd be so proud of you right now." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Evelyn spoke again, her tone shifting to something more practical. "I've been thinking about what happens next. For me, I mean, I can't just sit here and be taken care of like some kind of invalid. I need purpose. I need to feel useful." "Evelyn, you're still recovering. You need to focus on getting stronger." "I am getting stronger. Dr. Morrison says I'm ahead of schedule on all my benchmarks. But recovery doesn't mean useless." She straightened in her chair. "I was a good nurse's aide. I know how to care for people, how to run a household, how to cook and clean and manage things. Let me do that here. Let me contribute." Michael understood what she was asking, not for a job exactly, but for dignity, for a way to feel like she was earning her place rather than accepting endless charity. "If it helps you feel more settled," he said carefully, "then yes. But on one condition." "What?" "You stop apologizing for existing. You're not a guest here, and you're not an employee. You're family, and family contributes because they want to, not because they owe something. Can you agree to that?" Evelyn's eyes filled with fresh tears, but she smiled. "I can try. That's all I ask." Over the following weeks, a new normal began to take shape.
Evelyn gradually took over the kitchen, preparing meals that filled the apartment with warmth and the kind of home-cooked smells Michael hadn't experienced in years. She was an excellent cook, creative with ingredients, able to make something delicious from simple components. Liam started at the New York Institute for Special Education, a school that specialized in teaching blind students. Michael drove him there every morning, picked him up every afternoon, and listened to the boy's excited chatter about everything he was learning. For the first time in his life, Liam was around other blind children, kids who understood his experience without explanation. He made friends quickly. Michael met them at pickup, learned their names, their personalities. He found himself hosting playdates, something he'd never imagined doing, watching Liam laugh and play with a freedom the boy had never had before. Michael restructured his work life dramatically. He delegated more, attended fewer meetings, said no to opportunities that would take him away from home. His colleagues thought he'd lost his edge. His competitors thought he was vulnerable. But Michael didn't care. He'd spent 30 years proving himself in business. Now he was proving himself in ways that actually mattered. He also made a point of learning about Liam's blindness, not just the practical aspects, but the experience of it. He attended workshops, spoke with orientation and mobility specialists, learned how to be a guide without being overbearing. He made mistakes constantly, but Liam was patient with him, gently correcting when Michael forgot to announce doorways or left objects in pathways. One Saturday morning, in early April, about 3 months after they'd moved in, Michael woke to the sound of Liam playing piano. The boy had progressed remarkably, teaching himself complex pieces by ear. This morning he was playing something Michael didn't recognize, something original, composed by Liam himself. Michael lay in bed listening, feeling something warm and unfamiliar in his chest. Contentment maybe, or purpose, or just the simple pleasure of being present in his own life for the first time in decades. He got up, made coffee, and found Evelyn already in the kitchen, preparing pancakes. She looked healthier every day, the gray pallor of illness replaced by natural color, her movements stronger and more confident. "Good morning," she said with a smile. "Hungry, starving, can I help? You can set the table." They worked in comfortable silence, and Michael marveled at how ordinary this felt, how normal and domestic and completely unlike anything he'd experienced before. His marriage had never been like this. There had been staff to prepare meals, schedules that rarely aligned, separate lives lived in the same space. This was different. This was a family, imperfect and improvised, but real. When Liam finished playing and joined them for breakfast, Michael made an announcement. "I've been thinking," he said, "about summer plans. Liam, your school ends in early June. I thought maybe we could rent a house somewhere, Cape Cod maybe, or the Hamptons. Somewhere you can hear the ocean, spend time outside, just relax." Liam's face lit up. "I've never been to the ocean. Never. We never went anywhere. Mom had to work and we couldn't afford vacations." Michael felt that familiar twist in his chest, grief for everything this child had missed, anger at a system that had allowed it to happen. "Well, we're going this summer, all 3 of us. We'll find a house right on the beach, spend 2 weeks just being together. Can I learn to swim?" Liam asked eagerly. "You can learn whatever you want." Evelyn watched this exchange with shining eyes. Later, after Liam had gone to practice piano again, she touched Michael's arm. "You're changing his whole world," she said softly. "You're giving him possibilities he never dreamed of. I'm trying to give him what every child should have: security, opportunity, someone who shows up. That shouldn't be extraordinary, but somehow it is." "It's more than that though," Evelyn said. "You're showing him what a good man looks like, what it means to keep your word, to be present, to care about someone besides yourself. Those are lessons he'll carry forever." Michael swallowed hard. "I'm still figuring this out. I make mistakes every day, we all do. But you keep trying, that's what matters." That afternoon, Michael's phone rang. Dr. Morrison. He answered immediately, his heart rate spiking the way it always did when doctors called. "Mr. Preston, I have Evelyn's latest test results. Can you come by the office this week? There's something we need to discuss." "Is something wrong?" A pause just long enough to send ice through his veins. "I'd prefer to discuss this in person, with both of you, if possible. We'll be there tomorrow." He hung up, staring at the phone, dread settling in his stomach like lead. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, reading his expression. What is it? Dr. Morrison wants to see us. About your test results. The color drained from Evelyn's face. I've been feeling more tired lately, and sometimes my chest hurts, but I thought it was just. We don't know anything yet, Michael said firmly, though fear clawed at his throat. Let's not assume the worst until we talk to her. But they both knew. After years of living on the edge of disaster, after experiencing medical crises and near-death moments, they'd both developed an instinct for when something was truly wrong. And that instinct was screaming now. Dr. Morrison's office was warm and professional, decorated with abstract art and diplomas from prestigious medical schools. She greeted them with the kind of careful compassion that confirmed Michael's worst fears before she even spoke. "Thank you for coming in," she said, gesturing for them to sit. "I wanted to discuss Evelyn's scan results in person." Evelyn gripped Michael's hand tightly. He could feel her trembling. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," Dr. Morrison continued, pulling up images on her computer screen. "The scans show multiple masses in Evelyn's lungs, and significant involvement in the lymph nodes, liver, and bones. We did a biopsy, and the pathology confirms it's cancer. Non-small cell lung cancer, stage 4. It's already metastasized throughout the body." The words hit like a physical blow. Michael felt the air leave the room, heard Evelyn's sharp intake of breath beside him. "How is that possible?" Michael asked, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "She just recovered from pneumonia. How did we miss this?" "The pneumonia obscured it initially," Dr. Morrison explained gently. "The inflammation and fluid made it difficult to see the masses clearly. By the time her lungs cleared enough for us to get good imaging, the cancer had already progressed significantly. I'm sorry, I wish we'd caught it earlier." Evelyn spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stage 4, that means, it means the cancer is advanced and has spread beyond the lungs. At this stage we're not talking about a cure." Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle but honest. "We're talking about managing symptoms, maintaining quality of life for as long as possible." "How long?" The question came out flat, emotionless. "Without treatment, probably 3 to 4 months. With palliative chemotherapy treatment focused on slowing progression and managing symptoms rather than curing, we might extend that to 8 to 10 months, possibly a year. But I need to be clear about what that treatment entails, and what we can realistically achieve." Michael felt numb, disconnected from his body. "What are the options?" "We have several approaches. We can try a gentler chemotherapy regimen, not the aggressive protocol we'd use for earlier stage cancer, but something to slow the growth and reduce symptoms like pain and breathing difficulty. There's also an immunotherapy drug similar to what your mother received 12 years ago, though it's less effective in stage 4 cases. And there are clinical trials, though eligibility can be limited." She paused, her expression softening. "But Evelyn, I want to be very honest with you. Whatever we do, the goal isn't to beat this. The goal is to give you more good time with your son. More time feeling like yourself, rather than feeling sick. Some patients choose aggressive treatment and gain a few extra months, but spend that time exhausted and nauseated. Others choose minimal intervention and have less time overall, but better quality during those months." Evelyn was silent, staring at the scan images on the screen. Michael could see the tumors, bright spots scattered throughout her lungs, clusters in her liver, shadows in her bones. It looked like stars in a terrible constellation. "I need to think about it," Evelyn said finally. "Of course, but Evelyn, we don't have a lot of time. The cancer is aggressive. If you want to try treatment, we should start within the next week or 2. They left the doctor's office in stunned silence. Michael drove them home, his hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly, his mind unable to process what he'd just heard. 3 months ago, he'd saved Evelyn's life. Now he was watching her die anyway, just from something different. When they reached the apartment, Liam was at school. They had a few hours before he came home. A few hours to sit with this news, before they had to explain it to a 12-year-old boy who'd already lost too much. Evelyn walked to the window, stared out at the city spread below them. Michael stood beside her, not touching, just present. "I can't do aggressive treatment," she said quietly. "I watched what it did to people at the hospital. I watched them suffer through chemo just to buy a few more months of suffering. I can't do that to Liam. I can't make him watch me waste away, sick and bald and barely conscious. But if treatment could give you more time, More time dying, Michael, that's what stage 4 means. More time in hospitals, and in pain and too weak to be his mother. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I want whatever time I have left to be good time. Real time, time where I can still hug him and cook his favorite meals, and hear him play piano. Not time spent vomiting, or sleeping or wishing I was dead already. Michael felt his own tears fall. I can't lose you, not after everything. Not when we just found each other. You're not losing me. I'm still here. I'm still going to be here for as long as my body lets me. She reached out, took his hand. But I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault. You didn't fail. You saved my life 3 months ago. You gave me 3 months I wouldn't have had. 3 months of happiness I never thought I'd experience. That matters, Michael. That's not failure. It feels like failure, I know, but it's not. She squeezed his hand. I need you to be strong now, not for me, but for Liam. When I'm gone, he's going to need you more than ever. Can you do that? Can you be what he needs? I promise, Michael said, his voice breaking. I'll take care of him, for as long as he needs me. Not just take care of him, love him, be his father, give him the life he deserves. Her voice grew urgent. Promise me you'll let him be happy. Don't let my death define him. Don't let him spend his whole life grieving for what he lost instead of celebrating what he has. I promise. They stood together at the window for a long time, holding hands, watching the city breathe below them. And Michael felt the impossible weight of what was coming, the loss, the grief, the responsibility of raising a child alone. But beneath that weight he also felt something else, gratitude. Gratitude for these 3 months they'd had. Gratitude for the chance to know Evelyn, to help her, to be part of her family. Gratitude that his mother had led him to that street corner on that snowy night. It wasn't enough time. It would never be enough time. But it was something, and after a lifetime of nothing mattering, something felt precious beyond measure. When Liam came home that afternoon, they sat him down and told him. He took it quietly. At first, processing the information with that eerie maturity that came from surviving too much too young. How long? He asked. Maybe 6 to 8 months, Evelyn said gently. Maybe less, we don't know exactly. Are you going to do treatment? I'm going to do something to manage pain and keep me comfortable, but I'm not going to do the kind of treatment that makes you really sick. I want to spend the time I have left actually living, not fighting. Liam was quiet for a long moment. Then can I still go to school? The question surprised Michael. Of course, why wouldn't you? Because last time, Mom was really sick. I had to take care of her. I had to be there all the time. Evelyn's face crumpled. Oh baby, no. You're not taking care of me this time. You're going to school. You're going to be with your friends. You're going to be a kid. Michael and I will handle the grown-up stuff. Your job is just to be 12. But what if you die while I'm at school? What if I'm not there? Michael knelt down in front of Liam's chair, took both the boy's hands in his. Then you'll know that your last conversation with your mom was probably something normal and good. Maybe you told her about a test you aced, or a song you learned. That's better than spending every minute, terrified, watching her get sicker. She wants you to have a normal life for as long as possible. Can you do that for her? Liam nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face. Then he moved from his chair to the couch where his mother sat, curling up beside her the way he probably had when he was much younger. Evelyn wrapped her arms around him, and they sat like that for a long time, just holding each other. Michael watched them and felt his heart break in ways he didn't know were possible. But beneath the breaking, he also felt something solidify, his resolve, his commitment, his love for these two people who'd stumbled into his life and changed everything. He would keep his promises, all of them, to his mother, to Evelyn, to Liam. He would be present, he would be strong, he would be what this family needed, even as it shattered around him. Time became strange after the diagnosis, too fast and too slow. Days blurred into pills, appointments and stolen moments of normalcy, all under the steady awareness that this was borrowed time. Dr. Morrison started Evelyn on a gentle protocol, enough to slow progression without stripping her remaining quality of life. Pain medication, anti-nausea pills, steroids to help her breathe, a balance between fighting and surrendering. I don't want Liam's last memories of me to be of someone too sick to be his mother, she told Michael. I want whatever time I have left to count, and it did. Those first months she was still mostly herself, tiring easily, moving carefully, but present. She cooked Liam's favorite meals when she could, sat beside him during piano practice, and laughed at Michael's terrible jokes. Michael reorganized his life to be home, stepping back from his company, ignoring colleagues who called him crazy. He'd learned success meant nothing without being present. One warm spring day, Evelyn asked, "I want to visit your mother's grave. I need to thank her." So on a quiet Sunday, Michael drove them, Evelyn in a wheelchair, Liam walking with his cane. Catherine Preston's headstone was simple fresh flowers in the vase. "Describe it to me," Liam asked. Michael knelt and told him every detail. Evelyn touched the stone. "Hello, old friend. It's been a long time." She sat in silence, then whispered, "I kept my promise. I never gave up on your baby, and then you sent your son to find us. If you can hear me, thank you for caring about me, for raising a man who keeps promises."
She looked at Michael. "You're finishing what your mother started. She tried to save me 12 years ago and couldn't, but you did. It means everything," he said. Liam stepped forward. "Mrs. Preston, your son saved our lives. Thank you for teaching him what matters." When they left, Evelyn looked back. "Rest well, Catherine. He's exactly who you hoped he'd be." In the car she was exhausted but smiling. "I needed that to close the circle." That visit marked a shift, not in her health which declined steadily, but in her acceptance. Michael took them to Cape Cod for a week. A beach house with ramps and wide doorways. It was early in the season, quiet. Liam discovered the ocean, salt air, waves crashing against his legs. Michael taught him to body surf, both laughing in the cold water. Evelyn watched from the shore wrapped in blankets, smiling through tears, joy and grief tangled together. "I never gave him this," she told Michael. "Normal kid things. I was so focused on survival, I forgot about living. You gave him everything that mattered," he said. "Love, safety, strength." They hired a photographer to capture real moments, Liam and Evelyn building a sandcastle by feel, Michael carrying her across the sand, the three of them sitting together at sunset. "For later," she said, "so he can remember us happy." Back in Manhattan, they celebrated Liam's 13th birthday. Evelyn sat on the couch, glowing as she watched him laugh with friends. "This is what I wanted for him," she told Michael. Joy, but as summer deepened, her decline accelerated. The cancer pushed forward despite treatment. Her pain increased, the stronger meds made her drowsy. Hospice care began. Nurses came twice a day, gentle and professional. Michael learned intimate caregiving, how to ease her breathing, coax her to eat, sit through nights when pain kept her awake. Liam struggled. 13 was old enough to understand death, not old enough to accept it. Some days he seemed fine. Other nights Michael found him crying. "Why her?" he asked. "She's good. It's not fair." "No," Michael said. "It's not. Do you believe in God?" "I don't know. But I don't think cancer is punishment. It's biology. Terrible luck. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why does it feel like punishment?" "Because losing someone you love always does." In late August, Evelyn asked Michael to set up his camera. She wanted to record messages for Liam's future, his 16th birthday, graduation, wedding. Michael set up everything, then left her alone. He never knew what she said, only that she emerged from each session with red eyes and a raw voice. "You gave me time to do this," she told him. "Months instead of days. That's everything." By September she was confined to bed. She drifted in and out of consciousness, the medication softening pain but pulling her away. Dr. Morrison warned gently, "A few weeks, maybe less." Michael moved a cot into her room. Liam came in every morning and afternoon, telling her about school even when he wasn't sure she heard. One afternoon he told her, "I got an A on my composition. I wrote it for you. It's called Promise, Kept. Play it for me," she whispered. Michael lifted her into the wheelchair. They were shocked by how light she'd become, and brought her to the piano. Liam played a piece full of sorrow and hope. Evelyn listened, crying silently, memorizing him. When he finished she clapped weakly. Beautiful, so proud. It was the last time she left her bed. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday evening in early October, her breathing changed. Michael called the hospice nurse, then brought Liam. "Is it time?" he asked. "I think so." They sat on either side of her bed, holding her hands. Her eyes opened slightly. "I love you, Mom," Liam cried. Thank you for never giving up on me. Proud, she breathed. Be happy, promise kept. She turned her fading gaze to Michael. Take care of him. Love him. I promise, he whispered. She smiled faintly. Peace softened her features. Then with a final exhale, Evelyn Carter let go. Silence filled the room until Liam's sobs shattered it. Michael held him tightly as they cried together. The nurse confirmed what they already knew, made calls and left them alone. They stayed beside her body for a long time, unable to leave. What do we do now? Liam finally asked. We keep going, Michael said. We honor her. We love each other. We keep our promises. I don't know how to do this without her. Neither do I, but we'll figure it out together. And in that dim room, still smelling faintly of Evelyn's perfume, Michael understood his mother's final wish hadn't been about finding something worth living for, but someone. He'd found them. One who'd left too soon, and one who needed him still. Evelyn was gone, but the family they built, the promises they kept, the love that remained, those endured. Those were worth everything. 5 years later, Michael stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, straightening his tie for the third time. His hands shook, not from nerves but from pride, so fierce it bordered on pain. You'll wear out that tie, Patricia Rothstein murmured beside him. Lawyer, friend, witness to every step of the guardianship, the adoption, and the endless midnight calls where Michael questioned every parenting decision. I can't believe this is happening, he said. Believe it. Your son is performing at Carnegie Hall at 18. Be proud. I am. I just wish they're both here, she said gently. In the ways that matter. When the lights dimmed, Michael took his seat in the front row. The hall filled around him, critics, donors, Juilliard faculty, but he saw only the piano at center stage. Liam walked out, guided to his bench. Taller now, composed, confident in his movements. He wore the suit Michael had helped him choose. Good evening, Liam said. Tonight I'm performing a symphony I've been working on for 5 years. It's called Promises Kept, and it's dedicated to the 2 women who made my life possible. He began to play. The opening notes were soft, aching, the old hymn he'd sung on the streets all those years ago. Then the music deepened, gaining texture, strength. Michael heard Evelyn in it, her fight, her grace, her love. And he heard his mother too, the quiet resilience, the steady warmth. The melody grew into something vast and breathtaking, a tapestry of grief and hope, and the fierce beauty of survival. Michael didn't bother wiping his tears. This was his son, his brilliant, kind, extraordinary son. When the last chord faded, silence held for a heartbeat. Then the hall erupted, cheers, applause, people standing crying. Liam bowed, smiling a smile so full of joy, it felt like Evelyn had stepped onto the stage with him. After photos and congratulations, they slipped into a quiet cafe nearby, coffee steaming between them. They sat in an easy silence until Michael finally said, "You were incredible. I was terrified," Liam admitted. "What if I messed up? What if you didn't? And even if you had, it wouldn't matter. You played from your heart." Liam traced the rim of his cup. "Do you think she would have been proud? Your mother, she would have cried through the entire performance." Liam laughed softly, then his expression shifted. "I miss her, every day." "I know," Michael said. "I miss her too. Sometimes I'm afraid I'm forgetting her. I remember things she said, but not her voice, or how her hand felt." Michael reached across the table, taking his hand. "Memories fade, but what she taught you, who she helped you become, that stays. You carry her with you." Liam was quiet. "Is that what your mom is for you?" Michael thought of his mother, 8 years gone. "Yes, I don't remember everything, but I remember the important things. She wanted me to find something worth living for. Because of her, I found you." Liam squeezed his hand. "I'm glad you stopped that day. I'm glad you found us." "Me too. Best decision of my life." They sat together for a long moment, the weight of 5 years settling between them. Grief, healing, growth, family. Then Liam said, "I've been thinking about my name." Michael's heart slowed. "The adoption papers say Liam Carter Preston, but I want to be just Liam Preston." Michael's breath caught. "Liam, your mother's name, is part of me forever. But you're my father. You've been my father since I was 12. I don't need a hyphen to remember her. I want your name because I'm proud you're my dad." Michael couldn't speak for a moment. He nodded, eyes burning. "So can I." He finally found his voice. "Yeah, more than okay,
They walked back through the city, the same streets where everything had once begun, with a blind boy singing in the snow and a grieving man who didn't know he was about to become a father. At their building, Liam said softly, "Dad." Michael still wasn't used to it. He hoped he never would be. "Yeah, thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank me. I know, but I want to." Liam smiled slightly. "You gave me a life. Not just a place to live or a school. A life, a family, safety, a future. That matters." "You did the work," Michael said. "I just showed up." "That's exactly it," Liam replied. "You showed up. Every day. Even when I was awful, even when you had no idea what you were doing, you showed up." In the penthouse, the same space that had once felt like a museum of loneliness, Michael saw the evidence of their years together. Sheet music scattered across the piano, photos lining the walls, Evelyn's worn throw blanket on the couch. "I'm heading to bed," Liam said. "Juilliard meetings tomorrow. Good night, kiddo. I'm proud of you, so incredibly proud. Love you, Dad." "Love you too." After Liam disappeared into his room, Michael poured a scotch and stood at the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, 8 years ago, a broken man had driven through a snowstorm trying to escape grief. Somewhere, a blind boy had sung for his dying mother, and they had found each other. Michael lifted his glass toward the sky. "Thank you," he whispered. "Mom, Evelyn, thank you for trusting me with him. I hope I've made you proud." Below him, the city glittered, indifferent, endless, but he wasn't empty anymore. He was full of love, purpose, and the quiet certainty that he had kept every promise that mattered. His mother had asked him to find something worth living for. He'd found someone. And in loving Liam, in raising him, Michael Preston had finally found himself. It was enough. It was everything.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.